I'm Liana Everett, a nurse at Boulder Valley General Hospital. Our small cream-colored house, nestled in a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Boulder, looked normal, ideal even. But I had no idea that in just a few weeks, our seemingly peaceful life would unravel like a crack in a glass pane. Every afternoon after a 12-hour shift, I would come home exhausted, with a sore back and a foggy mind. But hearing my daughter Sophie shout, "Mommy's home," and seeing her radiant smile would make all my fatigue disappear. Sophie was 7, with hazel eyes like her father's, and a smile that had the mischievous look of a child. Her hair was a mess from rolling around on the carpet, her crayon in her hand. "Look, Mom, I drew our family today." Sophie proudly showed off a crayon drawing when her mother came home. I bent down and smiled softly. "Oh, it's so beautiful. I'll hang it in a special place." I taped the picture to a small wall next to the kitchen, next to a series of other drawings. There were 3 people in the picture, Mom, Dad, and Sophie standing in the middle, holding hands. At that moment, I felt a tightness in my chest. David had been gone from the house for over a month. David and I met as students at Colorado State University. He worked in insurance, which may not sound glamorous, but I was drawn to his calm demeanor, his kindness, and the way he listened to others. We got married after 3 years of dating. When Sophie was born, we struggled to raise her well, the sleepless nights, the rushed mornings to make breakfast. It was bliss. But then, one Thursday afternoon, while I was cooking dinner, David suddenly said, "My mother had a mild heart attack. The doctor said she needs someone to be with her all the time." I was stunned. "So let's go visit Mom together?" "No," he replied so quickly that I was startled. "Mom gets stressed easily. The doctor said to keep the environment very quiet." "But Sophie and I aren't strangers?" I asked again, unable to hide my hurt. David was silent, then sighed. "I'm just staying for a while. I hope you understand." From then on, he came home less and less. At first, it was once a week. Then it became 2 weeks. Then it was just short, superficial messages. "Busy with Mom. Everything's fine." No pictures, no video calls, no loving words. I began to feel anxious and hurt, in a way that I could not name. One evening, while clearing the table, Sophie looked up and asked, "Is Dad home yet, Mom?" I bit my lip and forced a fake smile. "Dad is with Grandma. When she gets better, he'll be back." Sophie frowned, tapping her spoon as if counting down the hours. "I miss Dad, and I never saw Grandma either." I took her hand and rubbed it gently. A doubt rose in my heart that I had tried to deny for weeks. The next morning in the hospital break room, I found Julia, my longtime colleague and the person who had seen me grow up as a trainee nurse. "Something's wrong," Julia said, putting her hand on my shoulder. "Taking care of an elderly mother doesn't mean cutting off all contact. If he really needs it, he can hire a nurse." I kept silent, but Julia's words were the last straw. That night, Sophie mentioned her father again. I looked at her, her eyes sad, her voice low, and I knew. I couldn't sit still any longer. I took a deep breath, then leaned down and whispered to my child, "Sophie, this weekend we're going to visit Dad and Elaine, but don't tell Dad, it's a surprise." The girl sprang to her feet like a spring, her eyes shining. As for me, I just hoped I was ready for the truth. Sophie's eyes lit up. "Really, Mom? We're really going?" I nodded, putting my finger to my lips. "Just this weekend. But remember, it's a surprise." In the days leading up to the visit, I began to prepare as if it were a normal family visit. I bought David a vintage leather watch, the kind he had pointed to in the glass case, but said, "Next time." For Elaine, I packed a box of rare oolong tea and some freshly baked scones from Julia's shop. I wanted to appear like a caring wife, but inside, layers of suspicion were starting to harden into stone. Why did you isolate me and my child from your sick relative? Why so suddenly, then less frequently, then coldly? On Saturday morning, before the sun had fully risen, Sophie and I set off from Boulder. She sang softly to the radio in the car, and I could only stare at her in the rearview mirror, feeling a gnawing pain in my chest. I had tried to keep a life together for her, a family, a father, but it seemed I was the one living in a fantasy. When I got to Elaine's house near the Austin Mountains, I saw something strange. The front garden, which had been overgrown with grass and had broken hedges, now looked as if it had been tended by a professional gardener. On the lawn was a small red bicycle with a cartoon character on the side. Sophie leaned over. "Mom, who has a bike?" I squeezed the steering wheel lightly. "It must be the neighbor's kid, honey." I parked a few doors down and adjusted my dress. The blue one David had said I looked good in. Forcing a smile, I took Sophie's hand. "Let's go, son." As the mother and son reached the end of the yard, a woman walking a dog passed by. I recognized her, Helen Walker, Elaine's longtime best friend. She attended Sophie's birthday party when she was 3. "Helen? Is Aunt Elaine feeling better?" I tried to keep my voice normal. She smiled happily. "How are you?" "I saw her at the farmer's market last week with David and the kids. He was such a cute little boy, with curly hair like David when he was little." My heart skipped a beat. The boy?" "Yeah, with them. And that young blonde girl, is she David's new girlfriend? They look really close." I nodded, thanked her, and walked away, my legs heavy as rocks. Sophie was still skipping along beside me. I quickly texted Julia. "I'm here. Something strange." As I approached the porch, I heard laughter coming from inside. Elaine's voice was clear and healthy, not at all like someone recovering from a heart attack. The door was ajar. I took Sophie's hand. "Wait a minute, baby." Sophie leaned out the door and looked, then turned back, eyes wide, her hand clasped around mine. "Mom, look." I looked down, and my heart broke in an instant. David sat on the sofa, his arm around the waist of a young blonde woman, clearly not a paramedic or an old classmate. She leaned her head against his shoulder, smiling slightly. At their feet was a boy of about 3 playing with blocks. Elaine emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of drinks and cookies. "David, Jessica, here's some lemonade. Noah, I have some butter cookies for you." "Thanks, Grandma," the little boy exclaimed. David stroked his hair. "Play a little longer, little one." "Son?" That word was like a knife stabbing my heart. I pulled Sophie back behind a nearby bush, holding her as she trembled. "Is that Dad, Mom? Why do you call that friend your son?" I squeezed her tight. "I don't know, but I will find out." I took out my phone and turned on the video. Every word from inside the house echoed clearly. Elaine. "This is my real family." David. "Liana is very predictable. Just tell her that her mother is sick and she will believe it. She has lived by that belief for 10 years. Jessica. "What about Sophie?" David. "Liana will raise it. And I just need Noah." I stopped filming, put the camera away, my eyes stinging. Sophie sobbed. I carried her away from there, silent as a shadow. In the car, I held the sobbing baby in the back seat. "Sophie, listen to me. No matter what your father does, you are not wrong. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. I will protect you." I started the car, my hands still shaking, but my mind clear. I called Julia as I pulled into the parking lot of a small motel in town. Julia's voice rang out worriedly. Liana, are you okay? I told him everything. My voice was strangely calm, probably because I was in too much pain to be angry. I don't believe it. What will you do? I'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow morning, I need to do something before I go back. Go home now. Stay with me. Don't think alone. Thank you, but I'll stay here tonight. I need to do something tomorrow before I go back. Turning off the phone, I looked over at Sophie, who had fallen asleep after her bout of crying. She looked small and weak, as if the weight of adulthood had just fallen on her shoulders. I carried the baby into the room and gently laid him down on the bed. Then I went into the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, swollen eyes, dry lips, but in those eyes, a growing determination. You will not fall. I opened the contact list. The name Elizabeth Cohen popped up, the lawyer Julia had recommended last year. I pressed call. Cohen Law Office speaking. I'm Liana Everett. I need to see Elizabeth. As soon as possible. The next morning, I took Sophie to the law office in downtown Austin. Elizabeth was waiting, gray-haired, serious-looking, but with sympathetic eyes. I gave her the phone with all the recordings and pictures. She looked at it carefully without any hasty comments. Enough. Here's the clear evidence. I will guide you step by step. That afternoon, I took Sophie back to my mother, Margaret's house in the suburbs of Boulder. Mom? She opened the door, saw me holding Sophie, eyes red. She panicked. Oh my God, what happened? I swallowed my tears, but this time, I would not stay silent. I had just finished putting Sophie to sleep when she whispered, I'll tell you later, Mom. I stroked her back, held her close, and smelled the sweet scent of her hair. Stay with Grandma Judith for a while. I have to run some errands, but I'll be back soon. Sophie rubbed her head against my shoulder and asked softly, Aren't you going to see Dad, Mom? I took a breath, trying to keep my voice gentle. Not now, honey. Everything will be okay. Julia was waiting in the car. She nodded as I walked out the door. Have you been to the bank yet? Okay. I transferred half the money from the joint account to my own. Bring all the paperwork, the house contract, the insurance, even a copy of Sophie's birth certificate. Julia patted me on the shoulder. Good. Now call David. My hand shook as I pressed the call button. It rang 3 times, and then his voice came through, indifferent and distant. Liana, I'm in a meeting. I just wanted to say, I'm going on a business trip for 3 days. Sophie is at my mom's house. Oh, really? I'll call you back later? Yeah. See you later. I hung up. Julia glanced at me and nodded. Great. Then we have 3 days to prepare. 2 days later, Julia and I drove our rented SUV into the south suburbs of Austin. The morning air was misty and suffocatingly quiet. David's mother, Elaine, lived at the end of a tree-lined street. Before getting out of the car, Julia asked, Ready? I took a deep breath. Ready. Time to end this lie. The door opened after a few knocks. David stood there, wearing a gray turtleneck, his hair disheveled, looking stunned. Liana, what are you doing here? I told you not to come. Hi, David. My voice was low and cold. We need to talk. Now. It's not convenient. My mother is resting. You mean Jessica and Noah are here? David was stunned. His face was pale as if someone had just strangled him. From inside the house, Mrs. Elaine stepped out. She looked healthy, wearing a light-colored cardigan, holding a cup of tea. Why are you here? I looked at her, half smiling, half shivering. You look fine. You don't look like you need round-the-clock care. David, get her out now. Sorry, I'm afraid I can't. Julia stepped forward and pulled out her card. I am attorney Julia Stone, representing Ms. Liana Everett. Hurried footsteps echoed from the stairs. Jessica appeared, holding the hand of a boy about 5 years old. She immediately pulled Noah back when she saw me. I didn't stop. I walked straight into the living room, the place where David and I had shared our dream of buying our first home. David, I held out 2 pieces of paper. Here are the divorce papers. And here are the custody papers for Sophie. David raised his hands as if to plead. Liana, you have to understand. Understand what? I interrupted. That you lied about your mother's illness? That you cheated on me? That you had a child with another woman while pretending to be a good husband? Julia spoke up, her voice cold. We have evidence. Photos, receipts, location data from the phone. You can't deny it. I looked at him one last time. Sophie and I don't need a man like you. This is the end, and I'm never coming back. I turned away, my heart aching so much I couldn't breathe, but my hand, clenched tightly, no longer shook. 3 months later, Mommy, my room is so beautiful. Sophie ran around her new apartment. It was small but cozy, painted pale pink, with windows overlooking a park with a carousel. I smiled, feeling lighthearted. Me too, honey. The divorce was quick. I won custody of my kids, half of my assets, and, oddly enough, my own respect. I was promoted to nursing manager, something I never thought I could dream of. My mother, Judith, is always there for me. My sister, Laura, often takes Sophie to the park on weekends, and Julia always comes every Friday night with pizza and red wine. 1 year later, the apartment was filled with laughter at Sophie's 8th birthday party. On the table was a 2-tiered cake, surrounded by the people I loved most in my life. Happy birthday, Sophie, the whole room said in unison. I glanced out the window and saw David standing in the shadows of the parking lot. He looked haggard, gaunt. I knew Jessica had left after she found out he had cheated again. His mother, Elaine, was seriously ill now, and he was saddled with medical debt, losing custody of his children, losing his family. He begged me for forgiveness, many times. I just said, it's too late. He didn't come in today, just stood there like a ghost. I bent down as Sophie hugged me tightly. Mom, thank you. This is the best birthday ever. I held her tight in my arms, looked around. My mother, my sister, Julia, my friends, and whispered, Sophie, family isn't just about blood. It's about love. It's about who chooses to stay by your side when everyone else has left. Outside the window, David's car slowly pulled out of the parking lot. Forever.